Today on 10-Minute IT Jams, we're joined by Tony Maguire, who's the Regional Director for Australia and New Zealand at D2L. D2L is a prominent company in the learning solutions space, and Tony joins us today to discuss the challenges the company and its solutions are helping solve. Thanks for joining us today, Tony, and welcome to the Jam.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Mitchell.
No worries. So just to launch straight into it, who is D2L and what are your product offerings?
D2L's a Canadian educational technology company, been around for about 25 years. Here in Australia, we've had bricks and mortar in Melbourne for, the best part of 10, 12 years. Out of the Melbourne office, we have all of our Tier 1 support, Tier 2 support, customer success, marketing, people and culture, and of course sales and business development. So Australia really is a hub for us. We provide a variety of education learning delivery platforms. Our flagship product is Brightspace, and we have a series of services and complementary offerings around that speak to things like data integration, adoption. For us, the question really is around how we can help our clients humanize learning and provide a very personalized experience for their learners.
Awesome. And what type of organizations would use these kind of services?
Everyone from schools, K-12 schools, through to large learning organizations like take Queensland Health. So government's a large part of their business, but also university space is really critical for us. The vocational space as well. So in a sense, when you think about all of those sectors of the education market, D2L plays in every single one. So we're very much at the intersection of all of those different sectors, providing services and also gaining insights from what we're seeing more broadly across the economy.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, there's definitely a big demand at the moment for those types of services. And have you found the training and education landscape has changed as a result of the COVID disruptions over the recent years?
Certainly COVID had a massive impact. One of our clients, Queensland TAFE, needed to rapidly change their delivery approach for hospitality workers in Queensland. The flick of the switch meant that they had to go from face-to-face to fully virtual and remote. So we helped them stand up and deploy a full suite of training packages for hospitality workers. It was COVID safe, best practice. We did that in about 2 weeks, from spinning up the environment, working with Queensland TAFE to deploy the content and then roll that out. So they were able to go from zero to a fully functioning learning setup that's now serviced about 300,000 learners.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The speed was the massive change, I think, and also the demands on organisations to pivot. Most universities and TAFE have already been doing this for quite some time. So it was an interesting conversation that they were having with their providers and their learners who were demanding online learning when they had been doing it for a while. So they actually were able to flick that switch pretty successfully.
Awesome. And there's talk about micro-credentials. Can you give us some examples of what micro-credentials are?
That is a very interesting space at the moment. If I was to think about one thing that most people are interested in talking to us about, it's around micro-credentials. Micro-credentials are essentially, and this is my primary teacher coming out a little bit, Mitchell, you've got to have a good visual. So if you think about learning from a Lego approach, the ability to be able to stack, package, and also build foundational skills in more bespoke, smaller skill sets. So micro-credentials are a way to be able to recognise smaller but impactful learning, attitudes, skills, capabilities, and be able to apply to them a recognition of competency or mastery, and then be able to recognise that from an employer perspective, from an awards perspective, or just from a badging perspective. So taking a Lego approach to learning, thinking about it in a more atomic way, but being able to bubble all of that information and learning up in a way which can make sense for learners, employers, and of course the accrediting organisations themselves.
Right. And what kind of employees are micro-credentials really aimed at, and what are the benefits to individuals?
The recent Jobs and Skills Summit that occurred in Canberra last week is a really interesting, I think, touch point for the value of things like micro-credentials. What was on the table for a lot of our providers and partners here in Canberra was the fact that they were demanding more flexibility. Flexibility means being able to take learning in a more appropriate manner for learners at where they are in their learning journey. So if they're partway through a career, they're just starting into a pathway, they want to change pathways, or they just need some skills to get a better position in the work that they're in. Micro-credentials provide a great framework for that that's recognisable. The learning is very chewable. It's easy to get through as opposed to a full degree or a subject that might take 3-4 months. But it's also more cost effective as well. So it provides accessibility as well as flexibility for employees or for learners.
Yeah, and that's pretty crucial in today's world. Why do you think employers would be interested in offering micro-credentialing or employing people with these kind of micro-credentials?
Employers need to have some trust that learning that has been indicated by the micro-credential is actually valid. An important piece to micro-credentials is that there is a role for industry, the delivery partner like a TAFE, and for the government in making sure that the frameworks are in place. But for employers, what that means is they've had a seat at the table. Industry has had some impact on what the skills or the micro skills are, or the attitudes or the capacities are to be. TAFE, for instance, can come in and help design that because they are delivery experts. And then government has some surety around the mix of and matching of skills to workforce development gaps. So it provides employers with a voice, it provides them with surety that the outcomes will be met, and it provides government with a sense of what is being achieved as you start to grow the economy.
And just expanding on that a little bit, how do you think micro-credentials can help people with disabilities or accessibility issues?
Yes, excellent question. So D2L works with a whole variety of organisations here in Australia and in New Zealand, of course. And some of our clients are very much at the cutting edge of accessibility. One of our clients in Takura works specifically with students who are really on the margins in the typical school scenarios. So they're not kids who are going to be able to go to school. So accessibility for them means access to content which is more activity-based. Teachers can work with them in a one-to-one manner. So that accessibility, if you don't have access in a normal manner, is one thing. Compound that with the challenges facing low vision Australians, for instance. Our clients here in Australia include Vision Australia, Deaf Children Australia. We take accessibility very, very seriously. So micro-credentials and the way in which they are developed and delivered through Brightspace in partnership with those accrediting bodies, industry partners, is a really important equity issue. So being able to access learning in smaller bites, wherever you can take it, anytime, anywhere, lower cost, and it gives you the ability to stack over time so that your life circumstance doesn't preclude you from getting into learning or continuing learning, is a fundamental change, I think, for a lot of accessibility advocates.
How can organisations implement micro-credentials through innovative technology?
So platforms are particularly important when you're trying to implement a micro-credential strategy. You need to be able to author quickly. So the life cycle of micro-credentials tends to be quite short. So you need to be able to have platforms in place which allow you to author at low cost, but also be able to tweak and update that information or that course information effectively. You need to be able to deliver at scale, because micro-credentials don't make sense in the ones and twos. It makes sense in the thousands, tens of thousands. So the platform needs to be able to provide scale, speed of delivery, and then of course data coming out of the back end. Who's completing what? What's the next micro-credential or the next piece of learning that could be offered up to them? And the third thing, and the fourth thing is Also having a platform that has the automation in place to take some of the burden off teachers and learners. So some of those typical tasks get automated and taken out of the workflow for learners and for teachers. It gives them more time to focus on the meat and potatoes.
Fantastic. And currently, which universities or other organisations are D2L working with to offer micro-credentials?
So one of our key partners is Deakin University. They have been writing the book on micro-credentials, the structure of them and the policy for quite some time. Victoria University also do a fantastic job as a dual sector university, looking to match what happens in the vocational space with higher education as well. So they have a great story to tell there. I think also TAFE Queensland is an absolute standout in terms of the way in which they are looking to innovate in the micro-credential space. So they are looking at partnerships with industry, maybe in green hydrogen, green copper, renewables, decarbonisation, and they are talking to industry partners, working with them to co-create that content. What will be the actual credential, the skills that are actually embedded in that, and then how that will be exposed as a badge, a micro-credential or whatever. And then they apply a quality framework to that. Now, I think probably TAFE Queensland is most interesting because they've actually looked to match micro-credentials back against the broader skills framework, the AQF framework. So that really innovative work there.
Yeah, fantastic. Definitely things to look out for. And do you think, in general, just to sum up, could micro-credentials help alleviate the current skill crisis?
They're going to be, the uptake of micro-credentials will be an indication as to what success we're having. We will have success based on whether or not we're focusing on the right spaces. We're providing access to skills and training that is appetizing to learners. We also need to get buy-in from employer groups, industry groups, to make sure that what is being created specifically fills those gaps. So platform side of things will actually help some of those businesses that are looking to consume micro-credentials, and organisations like TAFE deliver them. Because remember, we don't have as many teachers, we don't have as many back office workers in these roles that we used to. So a micro-credentials approach and technology platform that underpins that is really going to be the thing that gets us to that endpoint where what we need to be in terms of skilling Australia and reskilling Australia a number of times. I think I was just looking at some data today, and 90% of the jobs in Australia over the next 5 years will require skilling and reskilling, retraining. And of that 90% of jobs, 50% of those are in the vocational space. So there's a real need for technology underpinning at scale deployment of micro-credentials.
Wow, awesome. And very interesting research. And I mean, hopefully these new initiatives and things coming up will make a bit of a difference. And I can see you guys doing some great work. So yeah. Thanks again so much for joining us today, Tony. We really look forward to hearing more from D2L in the future.
Mitchell, it's an absolute pleasure. Have a great day.